Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the high-stakes, frankly kind of wild world of Accounting Standard 4 and how companies sometimes try to manipulate their financials. What we're really looking at today is a massive corporate game of cat and mouse. On one side, you have management teams pushing the envelope, trying to paint the absolute rosiest possible picture of their company's financial health. And on the other, you've got accounting standards designed to keep them completely honest. So today, we're decoding AS4. That's the specific standard dealing with events occurring after the balance sheet date. We're going to see exactly how companies exploit its blind spots, and more importantly, how the rules strike back. Okay, so to really grasp the stakes here, I want you to picture this. The financial year closes on March 31st. You look at the books, and they are sparkling. Revenues are up, margins look great, everything's perfectly fine. But then, boom. The very next day, April 1st, a massive buyer, a customer who owes your company millions, suddenly goes bankrupt. The money is just gone. So here is the million-dollar question. Does management confess this sudden loss in the financials they're about to publish? Or do they just pretend everything is perfectly fine because, well, technically the year was already over? And right there, that illustrates our first major loophole. The trick is that management deliberately ignores the bankruptcy. They basically say, hey, it happened after year-end, not our problem yet, so they don't record the known loss. This keeps their reported profits artificially high. But the reality? By exploiting this delay, the company is severely understating its liabilities. They're presenting a completely false financial position to the public. It creates this huge, dangerous blind spot, tricking investors into thinking the company is sitting on valuable receivables that are, in reality, completely worthless. So how does AS4 stop this? Well, if that bankruptcy confirms a condition that was already there at the balance sheet date, like say a customer who is clearly already struggling, that loss must be recognized immediately in the books. Ignoring it is straight up treated as a misstatement. So to understand how the rules actually catch these tricks, we kind of need to lay down the ground rules first. Think of the balance sheet date as a firm line in the sand. The absolutely critical thing to grasp here is the difference between an adjusting and a non-adjusting event. An adjusting event provides evidence of conditions that already existed at that balance sheet date. If the warning signs or the conditions were there, you have to adjust your financial statements to reflect it. A non-adjusting event, though, relates to brand new conditions that arose after the balance sheet date. And let me tell you, this little distinction, that is the core battleground for corporate accountants.
All right, trick number 1, manipulating time, playing with the clock.
Think about the timeline of a financial close. You've got day 0, which is the balance sheet date, but nobody publishes their financials on day 0, right? It takes weeks to prepare them. So you have this gap, this gray area, leading up to the final approval date by the board of directors. Now, because there isn't always a naturally obvious cutoff point for when events stop mattering, management absolutely loves to exploit the days and weeks in this gray area. It's honestly like they want a corporate time machine to rewrite history. They manipulate the exact timing of when the financials are approved so they can selectively squeeze in favorable events or intentionally push out the negative ones. It's a classic window dressing tactic. Well, enter AS4, playing the role of the detective. The standard is crystal clear. Events shall be considered up to the exact date of approval of financial statements by the competent authority. By laying down the law that this specific approval date has to be strictly documented and publicly disclosed, AS4 slams the door on that arbitrary manipulation. The clock officially stops. The company can't just keep shifting the goalposts back to hide bad news. But hey, what if management tries to get clever and manipulate the classification itself? This is another common trick, abusing management discretion. A loss happens and management simply decides, you know what, let's just wrongly classify this as a non-adjusting event. That way the profit stays high. They'll argue it had nothing to do with year-end conditions. But AS4 ensures that a manager's opinion cannot override objective reality. The solution here is substance over discretion. If the hard evidence shows the root cause existed at the balance sheet date, it is an adjusting event. End of story. And the auditor is specifically brought in to verify that supporting evidence, the date, the cause, the linkage, to keep management honest.
Moving on to trick number 2, asymmetric reality, hiding losses, hyping gains.
Let's talk about how companies bury future disasters. Look at how they handle contingent losses, like, say, a massive pending lawsuit. Companies absolutely love to label these potential losses as remote. And why wouldn't they? If they call it remote, they don't have to account for it, which means they avoid a massive hit to their profits. They just hide the liability completely. To stop this, AS4 strictly categorizes the probability of a loss.
If objective evidence shows a contingent loss is both probable and estimable, AS4 demands that a provision must be made immediately. You can't just understate your risks by claiming they're unlikely when the facts clearly say otherwise.
Now, flip that around. What happens when there's a potential gain on the horizon? Say the company is suing a rival and expects a massive payout. Management is usually all too eager to hype this up to inflate investor expectations. But AS4 lays down a massive roadblock here. Contingent gains shall not be recognized in financial statements, period. You literally cannot count your chickens before they hatch. Disclosing a potential gain is only permitted when its realization is virtually certain. This rule totally neutralizes that asymmetric reality where a company minimizes all its risks while wildly exaggerating its potential windfalls.
And honestly, this deception often bleeds right out of the numbers and straight into the footnotes. We call this selective disclosure. This is when a company selectively spotlights only the great things that happened after the balance sheet date, while conveniently omitting the absolute disasters. It is incredibly biased, and it's designed to mislead investors. The standard blocks this with a very firm mandate: full disclosure of all material non-adjusting events in the notes. If an event is big enough to affect an investor's financial decisions, it has to be disclosed fully. That means the exact nature of the event, the financial impact, and management's assessment. You do not get to cherry-pick reality.
But the ultimate reality check? That hits when an event threatens the very survival of the business. Imagine a massive post-balance sheet event, like a catastrophic plant closure or an unrecoverable loss. If this event is so severe that it jeopardizes the company's ability to even survive, what accountants call the going concern assumption, AS4 steps in with a massive shift. If the going concern assumption fails, your standard financials are basically thrown out the window. They have to be completely redone on an alternative basis, which essentially means liquidation values, because the normal rules of accounting just don't reflect that grim reality anymore. Which leads perfectly into trick number 3. The cover-up, paper trails, and watchdogs. So how do companies hide these maneuvers in plain sight? Usually by leveraging terrible documentation and deliberately avoiding an audit trail, right? Because if there's no record, the auditor can't catch the manipulation. To stop this dead in its tracks, AS4 requires entities to maintain a highly meticulous event register. This log has to capture the exact date of occurrence, the precise nature of the event, its financial impact, and exactly whether it was treated as an adjusting or non-adjusting event. This essentially forces the company to create a transparent paper trail, which severely reduces the risk of hidden fraud slipping past an audit. And speaking of audits, management absolutely cannot be left unchallenged here. Leaving them to control these classifications unchecked is a massive fraud risk. Auditors have to act as the final watchdogs, and AS4 requires them to perform very specific subsequent event procedures. They can't just take management's word for it, right? They have to pull the board minutes to see what was actually discussed behind closed doors. They have to secure independent legal confirmations for lawsuits, scrutinize bank statements for sudden shifts, and conduct direct management inquiry. These are the sharp tools that actually dismantle the cover-up. Finally, what's to stop a company from, say, treating an event one way this year and completely differently the next year just to suit their new narrative? Well, AS4 demands absolute consistency to protect the comparability of these financial statements over time. The rule is simple: consistent accounting treatment shall be applied. And if management truly believes a change in treatment is necessary, fine. But that change has to be shared openly with a full, heavily documented justification, no quietly moving the goalpost in the dark.
So we've seen how AS4 steps up to close these loopholes. From stopping the manipulation of time, to dismantling asymmetric realities, to demanding hard paper trails. So the next time you're digging into an earnings report and you realize a business has been relying on exploiting these specific blind spots to window dress their reality, you really have to ask yourself, if they are playing this game of cat and mouse with AS4, what other secrets are lurking deep in their balance sheet? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.